All right, welcome. Thank you for joining. Today is Tuesday, December 12th. It's the second meeting of our bicycle industry retailer-focused e-bike safety and standards panel. This quarterly platform provides a chance for industry experts to meet, discuss, and address retailer risks, concerns, and best practices regarding lithium-ion batteries and e-mobility devices, safety standards, and compliance. Very much appreciate the panel members who have volunteered their time and expertise to the discussion. A tremendous amount of energy has gone into making this platform a resource for not just retailers, but the industry at large. Working united, the collective conversation is propelling us towards continuous growth in e-bike sales and participation with limited risk and increased safety for all. I want to thank the more than 30 panel members who have joined today and continue to work collectively between the quarterly meetings. If you are joining as a viewing participant, thank you for being here. We welcome your participation by placing questions into the webinar Q&A function. Throughout the event today, panel members and the NBDA will monitor this, and some questions may be answered live, while others will be addressed back via our panel members via the chat function. Co-moderating today's forum is industry expert Mr. Jay Townley with Human Powered Solutions. Jay?
Good morning, or good afternoon, actually. It's noon.
Any words? Yeah.
I was going to go ahead with my opening statement, but go ahead and
Perfect.
introduce.
Thank you. No, thank you, Jay. Please do.
As we did at the very first inaugural session, we have an opening statement that goes to what we'd like to see here for decorum within the panel. And so the purpose of the Bicycle Industry E-Bike Safety and Standards Panel is to create a safe and a positive environment for our industry to become proactive relative to the situation and the opportunity that has been created by the growth of micromobility and the use of lithium-ion batteries as powering propulsion systems, and to review and update proposed action items every quarter. The format, which is open to suggestion and change, is constructed so everyone who wishes to be given an opportunity to share thoughts can. We want your ideas and your suggestions within the allocated time specified by the moderator for each question. Now, we'd like that done without interruption. Everyone else is asked to listen in a respectful and non-judgmental way with no negative reactions. Please direct all comments directly to the question or the issue, not to the comments made by the other participants. All discussions will be summarized, and proactive and constructive action items will be proposed for action by some or all of the attendees. The panel sessions will be recorded, so participants and listeners can review the questions, the discussions, suggestions, and the summary, and the resulting proposed proactive and construction action items. Heather?
Thank you, Jay. All right, let us begin with an update on our drafts circulated on the forum event that took place September 12th, 2023. There were 4 discussion points with proposed drafts. These drafts have been circulated to all panel members for feedback prior to today's event. I would like to take a moment to ask for any additional comments on each draft proposal. Following comments, we will ask for panel approval to move forward with the drafts. A note, the third topic for today will not move to vote as further exploration is needed. The first topic from the September meeting was on de minimis reform. The question, how do we organize the bicycle industry to lobby Congress and the USTR to immediately close the de minimis loophole on all e-micromobility products and conversion kits? The action from the panel discussion is that the NBDA prepared and circulated an open letter to the industry supporting the People for Bikes lobbying effort to carve out an exemption for e-bikes and the lithium-ion batteries for e-bikes and e-conversion kits, and encourage retailers and suppliers to write letters to the representatives and senators supporting this exemption. I want to ask the panel members if there's any additional comments on the proposed drafted letter. Okay, with this, a show of hands then that we would move forward in this action, if you're in agreement. All right, thank you, panel members. I see some great consensus there, and we will act as appropriate. The next topic was on the 3-class e-bike classification. The question was, do you feel that the 3-class e-bike classification system in place in most states is still relevant and best practice? The proposed action, the NBDA has circulated a proposal for an education initiative to explain that the 3-class e-bike classification system for e-bike use and the CPSC has and uses a definition of a bicycle that is inclusive of e-bikes for product safety standards. Contained within states that the panel believes it's important to clarify and confirm for the public the difference between product safety standards and the requirements for electric bicycles and the standards and requirements for use for individuals riding electric bicycles. This would be an education initiative focused on specialty bicycle retailers, the League of American Bicyclists, and for the International Mountain Biking Association members. Is there any comments from the panel on the proposed drafted educational plan? Okay, then could I ask for a show of hands that we're in agreement to move forward with the proposed drafted educational plan? Okay, thank you, panel members. We'll keep moving forward then. The third topic, which is not going to have action taken today, but I want to provide time for comment, is on building owners addressing e-bikes. We know that some commercial and multifamily building owners and management companies, at least in New York City, are trying to figure out how to address the issue of e-bikes. The proposed action has been deferred until we have more time to have more manufacturers test, certify, and list their e-bikes and batteries to UL 2849 and UL 2271, and also for additional consultation with FDNY and New York City officials on how requirements for both house authority and apartment buildings and commercial buildings can be incorporated into any actions we take before moving forward. Is there any comments for consideration at this time? Excellent. So that was just more informational, and I will, make a mention here that we are working closely with the City of New York just to make sure that we get this right. There is no immediate action taken here. Okay, the fourth topic was on CPSC standards. The topic was that we had a question that states, my understanding is that without an act of Congress, the CPSC process for creating mandatory safety standards will take a long time. In light of that, what's the best way to accelerate the sale of safe and regulated devices in US markets? This one is that we are aware that there's a lack of current engineering comparisons of 16 CFR Part 1512 and UL 2849 to ISO 4210 and EN 15194. And we do need to have these current engineering comparison. The draft action item now then is to establish a plan to conduct the necessary engineering comparisons and then report back to the panel. I know that we will work with Human Powered Solutions to do this. We are aware that People for Bikes is working on this as well, and we want to make sure that we have a great comparison in place. So at this point, that is the process of where this is. Any additional comments from the panel at this point?
Yeah, this is Kunal. I do have a comment. So we have created a comparison a while back between the 2849, the EN 15194, EN 50604, UL 2271, and UL 62133-2. Because these are all the standards that are focused on the electrical safety of the components. We did not include the 16 CFR 1512 yet because they don't have the electrical requirements in the standard. Those are for the mechanical side of the bicycle. So I would like to understand a little bit more as to why 16 CFR. I mean, the comparison of 16 CFR to 2849, I don't understand the reason as to why because those two standards are entirely different. And I'm more than happy to share the comparison. It's a nice Excel sheet. It at least compares the different tests and everything in all these standards, and I'm more than happy to share it with the rest of the panel if they would like.
Thank you, Kunal. I appreciate that comment. I see Jay has a comment.
Kunal, the reason that we are including 16 CFR 1512 is we are in the bicycle business. Complete bicycles, and we're inclusive of the definition, which are two classes under the used system of e-bikes. So therefore, we're in the process, CPSC is in the process of updating the whole standard. So while yes, we can go through and look at 2849, 2271, 2272, 2580, 1487, ISO ANSI 4210, however, when you get through the first 9 portions of it, are dealing with 16 CFR 1512, the mechanical test aspects of a bicycle. So if we're going to lobby in the end, the Congress of the United States and CPSC, we've got to have a complete standard. Now, if you're familiar with 1512, Mike and I are very familiar with it. I think several other people on the panel, including Ed Benjamin, are very familiar with it. It's old, it's antiquated, it needs to be updated very badly. It is nowhere near where you are with any of the electrical standards, but we're in the bicycle business. So therefore, we need to include all of this in shaping what will be the model regulation that we move forward. And if needed, it'll be within the industry, but if needed, we've got a position where we can go to CPSC a year down the line and be able to say, look, here is the totality of what the bike industry is recommending to replace and to augment 16 CFR 1512. And of course, what we don't know yet is will the electrical requirements of UL 2849 be simply incorporated into that? So therefore, again, the explanation is we need to look at all of this.
Oh, I agree with you
does that
there.
help?
Sorry if yes, it definitely does. So all I was suggesting is if you compare or spend effort in comparing 2849 to 16 CFR 1512, you wouldn't find anything comparable much in those. If you're just, the action is just to compare. But if, for example, 16 CFR is revised to say that the e-bike system shall be certified to 2849, so that would make sense if the 16 CFR says that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
So, Vanessa, I see your message and thank you for that. Anyone else on the panel have more to add to this topic for comments? Jeff, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask quick, have we discussed with People for Bikes at all as far as working together to align our suggestions and our efforts on this? I think obviously all of us individually don't have lobbying power as some other industries and groups of dealers and distribution services do. So it seems like there could be some benefit in all of us sort of working together. I was just wondering if there was any consideration of that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. People for Bikes has been invited to the panel. They could not attend today, but we do know that they have formed a committee as well to address this exploration. And we are in agreement that both of us getting aligned when possible and submitting comments from both respective organizations would add value. So we're definitely paying attention to what they're doing and definitely invited them to the conversation and following the work they're doing. And we hope that we can align so the messaging is aligned. Thank you for that. Yeah. Michael Baker, I saw you unmuted for a minute and I wanted to give you a chance.
I was just going to comment only to Kunal that we gave some very similar feedback already to the NBDA in the comment period. In similar respect to some of your comments, just supporting it. That's all.
Thank you, Michael. And we did get that and I appreciate that. Yep. Ibrahim, I see you. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm a little under the weather, but thank you. I just wanted to support with what Kunal was saying. that the 16 CFR 1512, of course, hasn't had any electrical requirements at this time, and probably could be something in the future, which may, and that the comparisons between already existing standards, a lot of that has been shared, and we'll continue to, disseminate. If anybody needs that from UL side, they're welcome to ask that as well. But yeah, the news is that 2849, as it got developed, involved many of the members from the 15194 committee, as well as the 4210-10 committee, and same thing with the 2271 standards. There's a lot of cross pollination between the technical committees that are happening, developed the standards that then became the consensus American national standards that also then got developed in the other parts of the world. So keep that in mind, that there will be some flavors that are the same, but of course, there are reasons why certain requirements will have a different type of take on how it addresses certain parts of electrical system safety. And there's kind of a reference standard system that's different for an EN standard, that's different for an ISO standard, and that's certainly different for a UL standard. So each one of the UL standards, ISO or EN standards, they are going to have reference standards that are and foundational safety principles that are kind of grounded in different component standards. So that's important to keep in mind, because if there are references or there's some type of recommendation that's made and it's trying to cross-pollinate between 3 or 4 different electrical system safety standards, I've seen it in the past where it kind of goes awry, because if you don't take into account all the layers of kind of electrical safety that goes into a specific end product safety standard, then the final output could end up being very confusing on, well, how do you then determine compliance if you're mixing and matching standards?
Thank you, Ibrahim. Jeff, I see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Ibrahim really quickly. I know that there's an initiative within the UL standards group to adopt international standards where they exist for products from IEC and from ISO. Is there a process for potentially adopting ISO 4210 for bicycles and harmonizing that as a UL 4210 standard?
So normally what happens is, if there hasn't been a established American national standard, then that would immediately start to say, okay, well, there's no American national standard for a specific topic. There is an ISO standard that exists, and then it becomes something that UL could then, UL Standards and Engagement, my parent company, not UL Solutions, but the UL Standards Engagement could then outreach American National Standards Institute to ask them, okay, hey, we want to harmonize with something that's already published out there, and then they'll work with the accreditor to see if that's possible. In a case like this, where UL 2849 was 4 years ago, it's just about 4 years now, achieved American National Standard status, that becomes then a question of whether or not is there anything deficient in the standard, and whether UL Standards Engagement is going to want to revamp and revise the entire document, and whether the technical committee would want to redo the entire 2849 for that purpose. So there's kind of several questions. One is the Standards Engagement organization and whether they want to do with it, and if they feel like there's some deficiency in the standard that would require a harmonization effort with 4210-10. And then if, let's say, it gets determined that there is, then there's other steps in the process as well, that discussing with the accreditor, discussing with the technical committee, and then going from there. So it could be a very drawn out process. But the main question, though, is what purpose is it serving to harmonize? Is there some difference in safety? Is there something that has been missing that's not already accounted for in the end product standard? So that's usually how it starts in the questions from a standards organization, is that they're going to want to ask, well, what's missing from the standard to then want to harmonize it to begin with.
Thanks for that explanation. That's interesting. Yeah, I think in this case, it's a clear candidate, because currently we don't cover any of the mechanical aspects of an e-bike. So and 4210 covers all those aspects. And I think that's kind of at the root of what we were just discussing here between 1512 and comparing it to, we have a bunch of electrical standards that don't really consider an e-bike in a mechanical sense. And then we have 1512, which is mechanical, and ISO 4210, which does consider the electrical and the mechanical. So
And
yeah,
that was one of the reasons
comparing
why
all these
mechanical-
standards is challenging when they're misaligned like that.
And
Thank
the
you.
reason why mechanical was never entered was because 1512 existed, right? Because so the framework for the American system was 1512 already had all mechanical requirements. There was not a desire, nor even if you put, let's say, mechanical requirements were in 2849, they would be superseded by what's in 1512. So that's kind of why 2849 only focused on electrical system safety and not kind of incorporated both mechanical and electrical. Unlike the EN system where they didn't have a mechanical standard, they didn't have an electrical standard, so they try to put in both. And so it's a different framework for the EN standard and certainly the ISO series standards as well. So like I was describing in the first comment I made, each set of standards, when it gets developed as an end product standard, it has to look at the framework where it's being built in, and certain requirements are being made a certain way because it's taking into account government regulations, other things that exist within the framework that would take precedence over what's going to be in that document. So that's important to know.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Lots of things to consider here, and I appreciate the expert minds sharing your expertise. Any other comments then on this fourth topic? All right, it seems like there's still some work to do, so I'm gonna just comment that we'll continue to circulate our efforts, our review, our comparisons, and as Jeff noted, that People for Bikes is doing some review on this as well, and we'll just continue to keep everyone advised as we move forward. All right, let me move on then. On today's agenda, we have 4 unique exploration topics. And how this forum panel will progress today is I will read the question. I will call on the panel members who have volunteered to speak on the items. And then anyone who is attending today, you can have an opportunity to place your questions into the Q&A, and our panel members will answer them on that particular topic. So without further ado, let's move to our first topic. These are topics that were emailed to the NBDA from our retailer members from the industry at large, asking the panel to address them. So I appreciate everyone who has submitted their questions. The first one reads this. It's around technology and how technology can be a big part of minimizing the impact of battery fires. So the question is, what can be done to stimulate the market and reduce product costs so more e-bike owners and building owners are purchasing safe charging equipment, such as battery charging cabinets and bags? And then the second part of that is, how can we inspire the development of technologies that meet additional use cases? In this suggestion, it's that commercial or multifamily residential opposed to fleet applications. So in layman's terms, we know that the cost of these safe charging cabinets are expensive. The bags are expensive. How can we make these products more accessible? And how can we inspire the development of technologies that'll further enhance the use? Speaker 1 from the panel is Ron Butler. Ron?
Can you disable the participant screen sharing?
Francis should work on that for you. You should be able to screen share.
There, Ron, test it now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Want to make sure you can see my screen firstly.
Yes.
Excellent. Secondly, I appreciate the invite every time I sit down on one of these meetings. You guys are really trying to solve problems. That is refreshing for me. It gets me out of the lab and gets me to talking to people who really have a problem for which we may be able to provide solutions. Let me go to the screen share. So the last time I was on the meeting, I had an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the grand solutions that we have in play as part of our US DOT funded project for developing specialized solutions for battery transport, storage, and charging. Those are still underway. But what you said just a few moments ago, Heather, is so key. We can talk about all the grand solutions we want, and those will be in play at some point. But what we really need to work on are solutions that are low cost, high value, and easily accessible for your members. So everyone is familiar with the problem. This is nothing new. I am in New York all the time talking about these issues, working with FDNY, working very closely with City Council in particular. I'll be there Monday doing the same. These are all tragic, yet sadly familiar to all of us. So the problem with some of the solutions that are being rolled out is that you don't have any of these things listed, right? It is tantamount to an outdoor charging station or setup, which is fine. But at the end of the day, we're not exporting safety along with some of these technologies. So there was an article rolled out recently, and I know some of the companies that were chosen for a New Lab project. New Lab was involved, New Lab Navy Yard. I think they're great charge technologies. The problem is there's no safety associated with any of the proposed solutions. And I think that has to be absolutely part of it, whether it's indoors or out. And the solutions that many in industry are proposing are absolutely not fit for indoor charging applications, which at some point will have extreme value for your members. So what we've done is we were recently awarded a grant as an extension of US DOT work, PHMSA, as well as the state of Michigan. Some of these companies listed are participating in a pilot project, which we are rolling out with the state of Michigan support, as well as New Lab, Michigan Central, which is a host organization, and MEDC, or the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. The goal is to provide funding for a pilot project. Many times, it's very difficult for a bike shop owner, for example, to come up with the resources to support their own pilot project. So if as part of the DOT work, we've developed suitable technologies for piloting and testing, it's expensive for the bike shop owner to host. So what we've done is gone out and captured a $100,000 grant that will allow us to basically hand over tech for them to test inside of their bike shops. We are looking for partners who are affiliated with the National Bicycle Dealers Association to work with us to hand over some of that tech. And I'll explain what some of the low-hanging fruit tech looks like in just a moment. This includes smart battery charging racks, and you'll find out what smart is. Battery charging lockers that are intelligent. And we're awaiting FDNY and the City of New York approval for us to roll out some of these pilots. I would love to sit down and talk with NBDA members. We're looking for at least 3 to work with us to roll out some of these techs, some of this tech in New York City. We are also rolling out the tech in Detroit. The reason we've chosen Detroit is I'm here as part of New Lab Detroit. City of Detroit has also offered to make the pilot project more seamless. Sometimes it's very difficult to get these through some of the approval processes. The City of Detroit is setting up a platform that allows us to do this in a more seamless fashion to get these things rolled out. We'd like to start the pilot sometime in April and do a 3-month pilot with data collection throughout. So in my last discussion with this group, I talked about this safe charging kiosk, which we are rolling out in Detroit, but this is very expensive. This is not something that a bike shop could afford or should afford. Our goal is to make sure that the members here listening have something that is reasonably safe. There's no perfection in any of this tech, not whether it's ours or someone else's. There's certainly not perfection when we propose to charge indoors, because that changes the pathway, that changes the approval process and the demands from an organization like City Codes, the Department of Buildings, or the FDNY. But what we propose in all of our systems is these smarts. What does the containment look like? Physical containment and control. What does the monitoring and detection look like? What does the fire and toxic gas control look like? For example, if we were to invest in a locker, how do we vent the toxic gases and explosive gases to the outside of the area of origin or the room of origin or the building of origin? How do we notify audibly and visually that there's a problem taking place? And then most importantly, I believe, is how do we communicate the failure issue to a bike shop owner at 3 o'clock in the morning on their mobile device that I have a problem occurring in my facility. I need to alert the fire department. How do I liaise with the fire department directly that I have a problem at this address in this specific location? So all of those are part of what we consider the smart or intelligent approach to battery transport, storage, and charging. Some of the value proposition as we try to bring in partners, the red represents the high risk and some of the risk issues that we attempt to control. The others are cost efficiency, and I'm sure everyone on this call knows that cost efficiency is absolutely key. Yes, we'd love to propose one of these charging kiosks, which serve to charge batteries, both removable and otherwise, battery swapping, battery drop off for recycling, etc. But we'd love to provide 100 of these around the city in unique locations. But to place one of these in front of an e-bike shop under the auspices or ownership of the e-bike owner itself can be a very expensive proposition unless there's support from government agencies, etc. We are in technology readiness level 4 on what you see here. On our other product, which we were proposed to, and we are charged to by the US DOT, and to some extent DOD, which we're charged to develop, are at higher technology readiness levels. Technology readiness level 7 to 8, which means we're ready for piloting. Here's another vision of what we expect. What you see in the reflection is not Michael Myers, by the way. We had to make sure that these are developed with the user in mind, hence a pilot project, because we need feedback from you. We need to know what you want to see in solutions so we can scale up or down. Do they work? Are they appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish? What I provided is a video of a lower order test that we did in the city of Detroit about 2 weeks ago. Excuse me, I'll go back. And as part of that test, we were able to demonstrate the effectiveness of a smaller container that we could have put in an e-bike shop to store your batteries or even charge your batteries. Much cheaper. It allows us to detect, notify, communicate. You'll notice that the toxic gases are able to escape to a certain degree. More importantly, per the coming UL 1487, which I think is a great standard that's being developed for battery containment and storage, we're able to contain the flame. So effectively limiting, not eliminating, I think we have to be careful with language, but eliminating flame spread, and that could eventually burn down a facility.
Thank you, Ronald.
Absolutely.
All right, we will move to our next comment. Now I have Mike Fritz from Human Powered Solutions. Mike?
The question is how can technology minimize the incidence of fires and in subsequent damage in industry? And I think there are a lot of technological innovations on the horizon. Obviously, safe charging and containment cabinetry will go a long way to mitigating and minimizing any damage and danger to people utilizing that. That's clearly an important development that's ongoing, as per what Mike or what Ryan is reporting. Long term, I think there's a lot of, as I say, technology in the pipeline. We've talked about solid state batteries that don't burn. There are developments going on in terms of fire containment, in terms of setting up fire blocks within within a cabinet to prevent cell-to-cell propagation, and then new materials to help contain a battery failure if and when it occurs. But the reality of it is there's a lot of battery packs out there in circulation right now, and New York is the best example. Clearly with 65 to 80,000 gig workers riding around on delivery bikes with substandard battery packs, it's going to take a long time to purge those from the marketplace. And the same is true with respect to battery packs throughout the country. Now, obviously, hopefully the majority of battery packs in use right now are safe and ultimately will be certified. But in the meantime, we need to look for ways of minimizing the damage that's going to occur when a lot of these battery packs that are substandard are going to fail. And I think at the present time, the only solution, given the absence of easy and readily available charging storage cabinetry, is by rules and regulations. We need to keep these battery packs away from living units and retail environments and whatnot, because the long and the short of it is ultimately they will fail. And until such time as certification requirements are fully implemented, and safe battery packs are the norm rather than the exception, we're going to have to deal with rules and regulations associated with where and how we can charge these things. So unfortunately, technology is not going to play a significant role in the short term because of the population, if you will, of substandard battery packs that are currently in circulation. So we'll one of the subsequent topics that we'll discuss is how do we keep a handle on battery health, and there's a lot of existing technology right now that can report battery state of health, but it's currently not utilized. It requires a specialized interface to the battery management system so that information can be downloaded and analyzed. So in my opinion, the best short-term solution is going to be regulation, unfortunately, relative to restrictions as to where and how you charge batteries.
Thank you, Mike. Any additional comments from the panel members? I don't see
Hi.
any. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll just chime in. Thank you for hey everybody. Thank you for Mike and Ron for speaking to this question. I'm actually the one who posed it. And I think it's hard and interesting work that I see, Ron is doing in his pilot program development, and getting things out in the real world is one of the best ways to see what people think of them. I think in framing technology development, it is really important to think about just kind of what community reactions will be. Everyone is very sensitive to what their streetscapes look like, and there's a lot of competing demands on public space. A lot of cities are really cutting down on the amount of advertising they want out in the public sphere. So I think, my recommendation would just be really to think hard about what kinds of footprints we're proposing, because that, and even what business models we're proposing, because that's, ultimately these come down to street fights, street by street, about where anything can go if it is an outdoor solution. And I think, we also sort of can't take for granted that there is necessarily going to be a lot of public funding for these types of interventions. So just some things, that's kind of where some of the question was coming from. It just is that a lot of the proposed solutions are very expensive. I think part of that might be because they're new and there isn't a big market for them. So it's hard to have economies of scale. But just wanted to share those thoughts.
Thank you, Dawn. Jeff.
Yeah, I guess I think I said this in the last forum that we had, but I would just point back to the fact that I really think that this is going to be a problem that's best solved by ensuring that batteries meet minimum safety standards. Since e-bikes are so new in the US, we have a lack of really good solid data, but I do know from what data that's available out there that the failure rate of batteries that have met the safety standards we're discussing here today is really quite low, and we should not be focused too much on responding to fires because of subpar product. We should be focusing on removing subpar product. So I guess I'd just like to make that comment, because we don't put our laptops in a special bag or a special container or anything else like that, or any of the other products that we sell or that we use that have lithium-ion batteries. So it's clear that they can be made safe. And I guess I worry about focusing too much on solutions to react to a fire when they shouldn't be happening in the first place. I guess the other point that I would make is there is an aspect to this of when you're at a dealership and you're charging a lot of batteries, the power draw within an electrical system within your shop, and just understanding the basic electrical codes and how you can load outlets and branch circuits and things like that is a really important thing to investigate, and something that all shops can do right now, by consulting a licensed electrician or something like that, just to make sure the existing infrastructure is adequate, because that is another area that poses a risk for shop owners when it comes to charging e-bikes.
If I may add, Heather, I wholeheartedly agree with Jeff. Clearly industry knows how to make a safe battery. And I think the regulators now understand that industry knows how to make safe battery packs, but they're requiring that they be certified. And we basically communicated the message to CPSC back in July that this is appropriate and called for. And then once the regulations are in place, they need to be aggressively enforced. To keep these substandard packs out of the marketplace, because a quality battery pack, a certified battery pack, is a safe battery pack. We shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. We can build safe e-bikes. We are building safe e-bikes. Most of the reputable, I'd say all of the reputable manufacturers are building safe e-bikes with safe battery packs, and ultimately this problem is going to fade away. But in the interim period, when we have probably hundreds of thousands of poor quality substandard battery packs in the marketplace, perhaps my suggestion is that we need to establish protocols that specify how to charge, where to charge, when to charge, and when not to charge into the marketplace, because we have to assume that until such time as the population of battery packs have been certified, we're going to have to be careful with what's out there.
Thank you, Mike. Dawn.
Thanks. I do think a lot of what we're seeing is baby being thrown out with the bathwater as a challenge. Jeff mentioned, we're not seeing these problems with, the high quality batteries. And I think that we all believe and are acting like that is right. I don't know if there is actually any real data out there in the world showing that, because I think that would be very helpful for people who are, making decisions. Back to one of the topics from last time, people who are making decisions about what's allowed in properties they manage and things like that. So if there is data that the industry has or individual companies have, and we could put that out there to help drive home the, this point that not all batteries and bikes should be treated the same way, I think that would be very helpful.
If I can make one more point relative to this, and understand what you're saying, Dawn, there is currently a significant lack of insight into the whole situation, and a lot of what we're seeing is causing us to draw conclusions that we believe are sound, but nevertheless a rigorous analysis that would be called for. But the other point that I wanted to make relative to the battery packs that are currently in use, I must qualify my statement relative to the fact that quality battery packs are safe for their intended use, but that needs to be footnoted to say that a compromised battery pack is also dangerous regardless of its pedigree. It can be a high quality certified battery pack that has been compromised either through external damage, immersion in water, any number of different tampering, any number of events can occur during the service life of a battery pack that will compromise its safety and establish a risk of catastrophic failure. So that needs to be one more element of the protocols that we'll establish relative to the safe handling and charging and use of lithium-ion batteries. Because, as I say, and I don't mean to sound repetitious, but until such time as we can purge the marketplace of these substandard packs and raise awareness relative to the appropriate protocols that should be implemented relative to their care and charging, it's going to persist as an issue.
I appreciate the feedback on this. A couple of questions and comments have come in. We have about one more minute on this topic. Kevin Smith from SGS has commented that he agrees that we need to have some industry regulation, and that'll help us tackle the root of the problem, not create solutions to solve for a problem. And also suggested that possibly the CPSC schedule a quarterly or monthly call with e-bike association sellers and manufacturers to discuss safety and create awareness. Fantastic thoughts. One more comment, Ron, I see your hand up.
Absolutely. I would be, and Heather, you, Jay, and Mike know me, and you're probably anticipating what I'm going to say. Batteries burn. As after 25 years of firefighting and 12 years of burning batteries, I can promise you that most chemistries burn. LFP, solid state, are not panacea. There's no perfection in any of this. That being said, there are safer chemistries, absolutely, without question. But to approach this as if they're, by rulemaking, you're going to eliminate the problem, I think there has to be care when you make those types of statements. I think you have to be very careful with definitive statements like that. So I don't want to sober things up. And I think we have to come up with very low-hanging fruit, very easy, low-cost solutions to this. But we're going to go through years of headache and heartache with battery fires. It's not going to disappear tomorrow.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate the conversation on this topic. I'm going to stop here to keep us on agenda. The next topic is regarding throttles. This question came direct from a retailer who states, the throttle on most e-bikes we've dealt with is either wide open or off. There seems to be no way to safely modulate the speed when using throttle only. Does the panel have any suggestions to help ensure safety at top speeds with diverse customers? I'm actually going to change the speaker order because I know Michael from SEBA actually spoke with the retailer who asked this question. So Michael, would you be able to provide your comments first?
In regards to that statement,
well, Michael, your audio is Michael, your audio is not great. Let me give you a minute to reconnect possibly, and I'll let Mike go. Mike Fritz from Human Powered Solutions, would you like to comment first?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see this comment. I personally have not experienced that phenomena. The closest thing that I've experienced is low spec pedal assist systems that only rely on a crank rotation sensor as opposed to a torque sensor, oftentimes manifest that characteristic, and in which if the cranks are rotating, the crank rotation sensor basically turns on the system, and then you regulate your speed, if you will, through the assist level selection. For example, on a 1 to 5 assist level option, if you select 4 or 3 and the cranks are turning, it's going to propel the bike to a specific speed, whatever that might be. And there's no throttling effect. It's just either on or off, and the speed is regulated by the assist level. But I've not heard complaints that throttles act that way. In my experience, throttles are the old style, were basically potentiometers that work like a variable resistor, or they're Hall effect throttles that actually do apportion power based on the setting of the throttle. So I would like to investigate this further, and perhaps Michael can shed some light on it when he gets his audio fixed. But if that retailer could contact me directly or contact me through you, Heather, and identify the brand, I'm more than happy to look into it. But again, in my experience, throttles act like throttles. You know, they apportion the power based on the throttle setting. And I'd like to learn more about that to be able to comment in a more enlightened fashion.
Thank you, Mike. Michael, are you back with us now?
Yep. Is this any better, Heather?
Slightly. We'll try it. Let's try it.
Sorry. So I did speak with the retailer, and the questions that I asked was more based around a soft and slow start. So when the person would throttle, the bike would take off very quickly, and it could pose a danger. So that was the main concern, is that the bike was taking off, and bikes do have in the controller a soft or a slow start feature. So that's something I know, Mike, you didn't speak to him, so I'm trying to shine a light for you to understand what he was talking about. And I asked him, was it a geared motor? So it did have a geared motor, which some of those geared motors tend to take off a little quicker, but there should be a function within the throttle that when someone jumps on the e-bike and just is starting out, that it starts at a little bit slower speed. This way the person's not jolted off of the bike. So that was the concern that the dealer mentioned. And much like my daughters, they have an electric Jeep that they jump on. As soon as they push the throttle in that Jeep, they get thrown back a little bit, which I didn't really like, but that seems like what the concern was. And I think that's more of a controller programming feature that can be added or modified to have that e-bike start at a slower speed. A soft start or a slow start is what we normally call it. So that was my concern, and I told the dealer to go back to the manufacturer and ask them if it's a feature that they can change, or potentially swap out the controllers on it to a controller that would have that slow start feature.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael,
Thank you for contacting the
So that was the
retailer.
main.
Yeah, Michael, that's exactly correct. More sophisticated, more expensive controllers will actually be adjustable. We call it the acceleration ramp. If you've got a very steep acceleration ramp, you get a lot of torque at slow speeds, and some people like that. But especially older riders. I worked for a company for a period of time where we were getting complaints from our customers, and they tended to be older people that didn't like that rapid acceleration. So in fact, we did go back to the manufacturer and ask them to tone it down. They were able to do that quite easily, and the complaints went away. So that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for reaching out to the retailer and clarifying that.
Yeah, very much so. I saw, Kunal, you put a comment in the chat. Any additional comments you'd like to make around that?
No, I was just responding to an earlier comment that if we can get Amazon to only sell UL listed bikes, we just have to be careful when we use those terms that it can be certified by SGS, CSA, Intertech, UL. It should not matter. It's the standard that matters. So just was highlighting that.
Thank you for that. Yep. Anyone else on the panel wish to address this throttle question?
I'll just mention in response to Kunal's suggestion that they've been working on that for New York City. So going through and looking at each device and classifying and verifying its credentials. So a lot of the work is being done. I think more pressure, whether it's from government regulation or industries, could cause them to basically apply that same filter for elsewhere in the country.
Thank you for that comment, Don. Michael.
Hopefully my audio was a bit better, but yeah, I just wanted to comment. So it didn't seem so much as a throttle problem as it was a controller problem in the slow start function. Because like Mike said, the throttle does have a variable signal based on your inputs. So the dealer was kind of focused really on the throttle, and that wasn't really the right issue. It was more a programming controller issue. I just thought I'd clarify that.
Thank you. Any other feedback from the panel members? Additional comments on the throttle question? again, I appreciate you reaching out to the retailer, and for Mike for your willingness to follow up as well. All right, let's move on to our third topic then. It's on insurance coverages. The topic is, or the question is, we know that insurance companies are alarmed about the incidents. And what are suppliers doing to help mitigate these concerns? And how can retailers best set up their store layout, policy, and procedures to reduce possible insurance rate hikes? It's a great question. We actually have Scott Chapin from Marsh & McLennan who has joined the panel specifically to shed light on this topic, and I'm hoping that some other panel members will as well. Scott, can I turn it over to you?
Sure. Thank you. Just for those of you who don't know me, I Scott Chapin, work for Marsh & McLennan. So my world is managing our bicycle industry insurance programs. So I work with retailers, and manufacturing risks are kind of the two main buckets. So this is a really difficult question. Oops. In that there's no really good way to answer, but I think right now the best way to address this question, assuming that it's coming from a retailer, is, you know, right now we're sort of in a situation where both the insurance carriers that write bike shops and the insurance carriers that write manufacturers all are a little reluctant, and there's really not a lot of markets that are jumping up and down to write this class of business. So, you know, a lot of the risks that retailers have are trickle down risks from what the manufacturer has or has not done from a testing, compliance, quality control standpoint. So I can say unequivocally that the manufacturers that have US domiciled insurance carriers, several of them have stopped writing that class of writing manufacturers that write e-bikes. The ones that still write them are tightening up their controls, which is something I've wanted them to do for a while. Unfortunately, insurance carriers tend to work with all sorts of brokers who have different skill sets and understanding of the risks that they're sending in. So, you know, we are working, for example, with some of the larger players to make sure that the underwriters understand everything that we're talking about in this meeting, whether it's from a testing, compliance, you know, what constitutes a good, you know, a good risk from the bicycle side of the bicycle. So, you know, whether it's 4210 or really drilling down into the, you know, into the electrical components in the system, and even really looking at, you know, the ability to subrogate in case there is a claim. So oftentimes overseas manufacturers that don't have a US domiciled insurance carrier, if there's a claim, it's hard to go back after them because they're just they're not readily available. They don't have a US legal entity. So what retailers can control is obviously a couple things. You know, where we've seen retailers dragged into bodily injury and property damage risks are oftentimes it's the products that they're selling and the products that they're servicing. Now, the products that you're selling, you have a lot more control over. You know, NBDA is working on the opt-in list for, you know, testing standards, insurance. You know, if all those boxes are checked, I'm trying to keep this brief, but I probably could talk for 2 hours just so. They can control that part of the risk. They can choose the brands that they're going to sell through the retail shop. Where they have less control, or it's harder to figure out what the risk is the products that are being serviced through the bicycle retail shop. We have seen, you know, the last in the stream of commerce get tagged with a lawsuit, and that last in the stream of commerce might be the retailer, and the only reason that they're being sued is because the manufacturer's overseas. They don't have there's no US legal entity. They may not even have insurance. It's shocking to see some brands that actually don't even have insurance trying to sell their product through retail shops. So you have a little more control when you're with the brands that you sell, because you can ask for the certificate of insurance, you can ask and do your own due diligence. It's really difficult with the dozens and dozens and dozens of kind of lesser known brands that are purchased online or direct to consumer. And if you have a bike in your shop, how do you assess whether or not you should even be working on that? Because again, you might be the last in the stream of commerce before a bodily injury or property damage claim occurs, and now your insurance has to respond to it. And yeah, so that's a couple things. I guess lastly, there's these questions are specific to retailers. There's not a lot of insurance markets, again, jumping up and down to write bike shops. The ones that are, like through our program, for example, it's because we've educated them for the last 8 to 10 years on what e-bikes are. They understand what they are and what they're not, and they understand how to, assess whether the risk is good, whether it's a quality brand. A lot of the carriers, again, that term was just used a few minutes ago, and I used it this morning. A lot of insurance companies are throwing the baby out with the bathwater, meaning they may dabble in writing bike shops, but they don't do enough to properly understand what the risk profiles are, especially when it comes to e-bikes. So they just simply non-renew the entire book of business, regardless of whether retailer A, B, or C has even had a claim. They generally have one big claim, and they're, again, lumping everybody together. So it's really, we see it all the time, getting online applications. And why are you getting non-renewed? Well, Erie Insurance Company is non-renewing all of their e-bike retailers. We haven't had any claims. So it's sort of back to being able to make sure that there are available options. There are carriers that have underwriting departments that are quite savvy and are comfortable with the e-bike risk, but it's few and far between, both on the product liability on the manufacturer side and the retailer. So probably went over 5 minutes, but again, I could talk all day about this. So
I appreciate it, Scott. There's a lot of information here. Anyone else on the panel want to comment on this question? Michael, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to touch, is the audio okay?
It's not great, but we'll try it.
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
But I just wanted to comment on something that Scott said, that he's been educating the retailers for the past 8 to 10 years. And they have to be very cognizant of what bikes they take into service. So, and that's fully understandable, but a lot of companies are direct to consumer. How are those direct to consumer brands that may have UL batteries and chargers, maybe not 2849 or maybe 2849? How is a retailer supposed to discern which bike to take on? Because there has been a lot of bikes sold online in the last 5 years that people desperately need service for to keep their bike rolling. And we don't want shops to limit their revenue by not being able to service. And we want the people on e-bikes to keep riding their e-bikes, not have a boat anchor in their garage. So I think what you said, Scott, it kind of struck a chord with me, where you've been educating people because you want to limit the risk and keep everybody safe as well. And that's fully understandable. And I know myself and Heather last week did kind of a webinar about training. And I think that would be a big proponent of having dealers trained properly to be able to recognize, what a damaged battery is. And I think one of the parts is communication with the customer. I might be one of the few on the panel that has the technical expertise, as well as owned an e-bike shop for 14 years. So I've been in the trenches and get to see everything myself and understand both perspectives. So when a customer comes in with a bike that needs service, you don't want to be a shop that's hesitant. You want to be able to take in that business, but do it where your staff is safe, as well as the person riding the bike is going to be safe, because whoever's working their bike, certified tech can understand where the risks are and what they are.
Thank
So
you.
I think the educational piece that ties into that would really raise a big part of
Thank you for that comment. Scott, before I see Don's hand up, before I go to Don, any reply to that comment or thoughts there? I see you nodding your head. Just in agreement. Okay. All right, Don, I see your hand up.
Yeah, on this topic, I just wanted to share, 50 something odd electric micromobility pieces of legislation have been proposed this session in the New York State Legislature. There's a lot of people interested in, doing something about the fire issue in particular. One of those pieces of legislation is increasing like insurance requirements. So I just sort of wanted to flag that for this group's awareness. I don't know if that legislation is gaining traction or not. I think at least, we haven't developed our like formal city position for if the case it does advance, but I preliminarily, we're thinking that, if there is an increase in insurance requirements, it would need to be supported by data showing that the insurance requirements or insurance in place is not sufficient to address the incidents that are occurring. This year, 5 of the 250 odd fires in New York City from electric micromobility were in shops. So 5 fires is really bad, but it's also a small share of the problem. So I wanted to just flag that for the group's awareness to see if, to be on watch for if legislatures are being helpful on the insurance issue or unhelpful.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. Any additional comments, feedback from the group? The second topic or the second part of that question did address any particular storage, store layout, anything that retailers could do in the store to reduce any risk or maybe to prove to their insurance company that they're taking the best steps. Brian, I'm not going to don't mean to put you on the spot, but you are here and I know you've been looking at best tips for retailers in their setup. Anything that you would lend to this conversation?
Well, I would say that I'm in a learning mode with everybody else on that topic. Like I'm super interested in the stuff that Ron was presenting earlier and how that could be possibly implemented. But I'm like on the ground with the retailers, listening to the limitations and knowing the limitations of their spaces. And yeah, it's a tough problem right now to come up with solutions that are affordable and workable and just work space wise and all of that. So I would say I'm in a definite learning mode and I'm sitting here writing notes furiously and I'm going to be following up with people so that we can be coming up with good, reasonable solutions that, I see the insurance thing coming along and I don't honestly hear that much with the retailers that we work with around the country, but I know it's coming. Like I know that topic is going to be an important one moving forward. So unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of insight right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you, Brian. I will, we will talk about the San Francisco Fire Code. And I know New York City did implement some changes to their fire code requiring certain special rooms or fire safe walls. And the NBDA is working with Fixture Lab and other experts to come up with solutions that we can present to retailers that are low cost. There's a comment also, Call to Recycle has some safety items that are available for retailers as well. I want to make sure that is mentioned. I have a couple more minutes on this. Michael, I saw your hand up first. Hopefully we can hear you clearly. Thank you. Did you have a comment?
Sorry, Heather. I didn't realize my hand was still up, but yes, I do have a comment. With the low cost for retailers for fires, I know we touched base on it last meeting, and there's no silver bullet solution at the moment. And we do have a lot of members and people reaching out for a safer solution. We talked about bags last time, and the thread, I guess, around the bags kind of being the issue. So we're still kind of searching and hunting for that solution for retailers. And I think, like Jeff said, we don't have any other lithium products that we need bags or special care for, like we do e-bike batteries at the moment. So we're still looking for that answer for retailers as well as consumers in the meantime, until every bike is certified to have a solution to kind of prevent the fires.
Thank you.
So I'd like to find an answer that would work.
Thank you. And Mike, I see you, and you have permissions now to share your screen as well.
Okay, good. Some information came to light, I think it was last week, the week before last. I've joined NFPA, National Fire Prevention Association, and they had a webinar on last week in which a very prominent PhD professor from the University of Texas, and I'm not even going to try to say his name. Ron Butler knows him quite well. I think we've lost Ron though, but he actually presented some data, some fresh data on lithium-ion battery fires that I'd like to share just briefly. This is some research that's indicating that the likelihood that a failing lithium-ion battery is going to cause a fire is dependent upon its state of charge. In other words, a fully charged or an almost fully charged battery, if it fails, in all likelihood is going to generate a fire. But if it's at a low state of charge, either 50% or less, then the likelihood that a failing battery pack is going to generate a fire is low. It's not zero, but it's lower than it would be if the failing battery pack was fully charged. Then, when you think about it, this makes sense. But we've got some very hard data here that proves that. So the reason I brought this up is I am recommending to the dealers that they always store battery packs in a lowered state of charge. In other words, if you receive a shipment of new bikes, don't automatically pull the battery pack out and top it off. That's not what you want to do. Only charge the battery pack as you're preparing to deliver the bike to the customer that's purchased it. Because if in fact it does fail, a low state of charge is going to be a significantly less traumatic occurrence than it would be if it were a fully charged state of charge. So this might be just a little protocol that would be implemented in a shop. When it's all possible, leave battery packs in a relatively low state of charge. There are requirements for shipping battery packs that they need to be below 35%, I believe, is the requirement. So when a manufacturer or distributor ships the bike with the battery pack to the retailer, it's already at a low state of charge. Leave it that way. Leave it that way until such time as you need to deliver the bike. So just a tip, if you will, that I think might be effective for utilization, and it's certainly easy to do in a bike shop.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that slide share. Anything else from the panel here? Oh, Jeff, yes?
Yeah, sorry, just really quickly, I just want to second what Mike Fritz said. That is an excellent suggestion that people can do now and every day with their shop, mainly because that is also the regulation for shipping batteries. Excuse me. UN comes up with a big list of requirements for shipping various dangerous goods, which lithium batteries are categorized as. And one of the requirements is that batteries are shipped in a state of charge of 30% or less. So anything that can be done to keep batteries in a lower state of charge, it is well known that is highly likely to reduce fires. And I would just like to reiterate as well what Scott said. Unfortunately, in the US, for better or worse, a lot of regulation is enforced through whether or not a company can be in the legal system. Tort law is used quite extensively to enforce regulation. So again, if you're dealing with bicycles that are not coming from companies that have a physical presence in the US, you can't go after them to sue them. You can't go after them for insurance purposes. They basically are without liability, and therefore they also don't have the impetus to follow the regulations or to, do a lot of things that that we need in e-bikes for them to be safe. So I would just sort of reiterate that. I know it's difficult to always verify where a bike comes from, its origin, whether there's a company in the US, but it is something that can be done to drastically reduce risk.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional comments from the group? Fantastic. I appreciate everyone. Let's move to our fourth topic today. It regards battery health. Many batteries are coming into retail locations that may have been worked on at home, dropped, exposed to heat or other elements. What are things that a retailer can do to check the health of a battery? And how are suppliers and the industry at large helping to ensure a retailer does not assume all risk? Are there any resources? Kind of a two-part question around battery health and how we can tell if a battery has been worked on at home, dropped, or exposed to other elements. We have Rob Latham from Call to Recycle, who's going to begin our conversation on this. Rob?
Thank you, Heather. I'm going to skip straight to the end of that question first and then work backwards. The question was, how is the industry at large helping to ensure a retailer doesn't assume all the risk? So as you're aware, hopefully, the industry has gotten together accomplished a first for the transportation sector, and has implemented an end-of-life management plan for batteries. And this is an EPR, or extended producer responsibility model, where this is covered at the time it goes into the market. So in participating brands, and I'm going to drop this in the chat just so it's clear, we have a logo image that shows the 55 plus or 57 brands that are participating in the program so far. All batteries that they put into the market are covered through this program. And, as Dawn mentioned earlier, you think about it from the public sector perspective, there's not a lot of funding in the public sector to deal with this kind of thing. And legislation is coming, but it's not here yet. But the industry got together in a forward-thinking way and got in front of this. So first is just kudos to the industry for doing this up front. Call to Recycle has been, solving logistical hurdles with battery recycling for over 25 years. And this is a new realm because of the energy density being over 300 watt hours. There's additional challenges here. So just to talk to the other questions about, resources available. There's training for the retailers around this. So, identifying a dangerous battery and how to handle the different types of situations you may encounter. There's also safety materials provided through this program to be able to deal with an incident in the shop, and also being able to get those out of your shop, because ultimately any battery that you come in contact with is somewhere on a span of from brand new to end of life. They all have a lifespan. It's highly variable depending on how it's treated and everything like that. But you can just get an indication from what typical warranties are, a couple of years, anywhere from a few hundred charge cycles to 1,000 charge cycles. After that, it's on borrowed time, and you need to be able, as a retailer, to identify when it's time to use the appropriate end of life management solution for the batteries. And so some of the things in the first part of the question would be an automatic skip to end of life. If it's been worked on at home, that's end of life battery immediately. It should be considered a damaged defective. And again, our training for the shop shows there's really two scenarios. It's either the damaged defective category, which is a very low percentage of the batteries. But if it's, case has been opened, if it's been exposed to a fire or a flood or, submerged in water, severe physical damage, leaking, swelling, burn marks, it needs to be treated as a dangerous battery. It goes into one of our damaged defective kits, and we actually take care of those batteries for these, make sure that they get safely recycled. If it's otherwise, you're looking at, typical signs of an end-of-life battery are going to be reduced charge range, not turning on, not charging, maybe not working as intended, but not necessarily damaged. And those are okay to go into our end-of-life container. I don't want to go over my time, but obviously I could talk about the number of batteries going into the market, and just again, kudos to the manufacturers for putting this in place and getting in front of it. But it's not an easy task to safely collect and recycle these types. This doesn't exist in every town. There's not just like metals recycling, is pretty commonplace. We're not there yet with these types of batteries. They need to go to a special facility to be properly and safely recycled. And that's what Call to Recycle does.
We really appreciate the great work you're doing, and I appreciate your feedback on this. Mike, Fritz was prepared to give a comment on this as well. Mike?
Well, and basically building on what Rob just mentioned, there's several telltales, if you will, relative to, a battery's condition. The easiest to discern. I mean, if this is focused at dealers who have to discern whether or not a battery pack is in a condition that they need to be aware of, is if there's obvious physical damage to the case that indicates that it's been dropped. If the case is cracked or scuffed up to a significant degree, you're prudent to make an assumption that in fact it's been mechanically abused and therefore suspect. Clearly, a battery pack that shows signs of having been immersed in water, that's a ticking time bomb. Get that outside of the shop and either get it recycled through Call to Recycle or call your local fire department. End-of-life battery packs, again, as Rob has indicated, if they don't hold a charge, if customers are complaining that their range has diminished significantly, then it's at its end of life. Its hazard index is low. Especially if it's not holding much of a charge, based on what we talked about just a few minutes ago relative to the propensity of a battery to burn if it's got a high state of charge. So, but there are more sophisticated technologies available to help you gauge a battery state of charge. Every lithium-ion battery that's been produced since the mid-teens utilizes an onboard computer, if you will, a battery management system. And battery management systems are very intelligent. They have the ability to track every usage of that battery pack. Every event in the life of that battery pack is recorded, and it's accessible, it's available. But right now, as we talked earlier, it's only available if you've got the proper equipment and it's been properly configured to enable it to be that information to be extracted. And more sophisticated, higher priced e-bikes have CAN bus integrated. CAN stands for Controller Area Network. It represents an opportunity to tap into the data that's available in the entire system to look at the battery state of health. One of the parameters that are calculated in the battery management system is state of health, and it depends. It has a number of things relative to the pack's ability to hold a charge, how many cycles it's experienced, whether or not it's been exposed to heat. There are a number of different flags integrated into the battery management system that can indicate a traumatic experience that you can see. Now, that data, as I say, is not readily available. And this was one of the topics that we discussed at the CPSC meeting back in July. CPSC is basically saying, how you as manufacturers, how can you advise a customer to investigate a possible battery issue? And that's when I made the suggestion that maybe what we need is something akin to what you see in automobiles, a signal that's conveyed to the instrument, to the human interface, the display that says check your battery. And that information is certainly discernible. It just needs to be communicated to the user such that he refers that bike, that battery pack, to a servicing dealer that can do a better job diagnosing its condition and determining whether or not it's just at its end of life, or if there is in fact a problem that might manifest itself in a dangerous condition. So, and then probably the most important one, especially as it relates to New York, is, has that battery pack been tampered with? CPSC was quite insistent that we integrate a means to signal the fact that a battery pack has been opened. I used to work for a battery pack manufacturer, TD High-Tech Energy. They're a high-quality pack manufacturer based in Taiwan. They would put one of these little holographic labels over one of the screw holes. You know, there were 4 screws that held the lid onto the battery pack, and one of them was protected by one of these holographic labels. If the label was peeled off, the hologram changed, and it basically indicated tampered. And they were very hard to counterfeit, much like the UL label is hard to counterfeit. And if somebody took a look at that pack and it either didn't have the label, or the label had indicated that it had been removed, you knew that somebody had messed with the battery pack, and that automatically raises suspicion. So there's more work to be done in terms of enhancing the intelligence of our systems. The technologies are there. It's just a matter of turning them on.
Thank you, Mike. I see a lot of heads nodding in agreement with what you're saying. I appreciate your expertise. Michael, I see your hand up.
I'm just going to keep my video off. Hopefully it helps with the audio. Hopefully that's better.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to comment on what Rob said about at the retail level. At the Canadian E-Bike Association, we partnered with the Call to Recycle in Canada. So, and it's a great program here. We do need a little more educational resource for it. It's not as extensive as the US, but it's a great program that we let all of our retailers know here that is available. And the second part of the answer I have would be towards educating the consumer. So asking the right questions. Even if somebody calls in about a battery issue, I over the phone personally at my shop would say, did you drop your bike? Was it left in the rain? Why is the battery not functioning properly? To get a good idea of what that failure could possibly be before they bring it to our shop. And it's good to ask the right questions to those consumers, like how old is your battery? How often do you drive it? And if it's a few years old, generally, and the range has been diminishing, we'll just tell them it's end of life. The other side of that is, has it been damaged, cracked, looking for anything external or an impact that could have happened. So I think asking the right questions as a retailer really goes a long way in defining how to handle that battery moving forward. Some people we've walked in, they just randomly walked in with their battery, and they said, oh, I dropped it. And I'd say, okay, well, let's go outside. And I'd keep their battery outside and let them know they can't use it anymore, and that we could recycle it for them and dispose of it properly. And the dangers. So I think education is a big part of that.
Thank you, Michael. Dawn.
Thanks. I have a question sort of coming from the consumer side of that, because this is a question we get, how do I know if there's problems with my battery? And there's all the physical inspection aspect of it. For the type of device that accesses the battery management system, like, would it be good advice to tell consumers, if you're not sure if your battery is in good condition, bring it to the shop where you bought it, and they'll be able to diagnose it. And then sort of part 2 of that is, is the ability to diagnose through the battery management system something that the Trek shop would only have the equipment to look at Trek batteries, or is it more generalized so that it could, if the store is willing, they could look at different types of batteries?
I can answer that partially. Some of the more sophisticated systems do have the ability at the dealer level to interface with a diagnostic system, if you will. And again, it all relates on this ability to communicate status relative to various aspects of the propulsion system. And there are various means whereby that information can be extracted at the shop and analyzed by an expert and advice given to the consumer. But that's relatively rare. It's the Bosch level system, for example, Probably the most sophisticated propulsion systems currently in the marketplace. That technology is proliferating, but slowly. Lower priced e-bikes don't, the distributors, manufacturers don't offer that level of sophistication, if you will, in terms of diagnostics. I think your question is a partial yes, but unfortunately it's not a big enough yes that everybody can do it. Jeff has his hand up. Perhaps he can elaborate a little bit more on that.
I appreciate it. Great question, Don. And yeah, Jeff, I'll let you go next, please.
Yeah, the second part of the question kind of felt like it was geared towards me anyways. But yeah, I think Mike hit it. I would say that there a lot more batteries do have the potential. The challenge is it, and I hate to keep coming back to it, but it is entirely based upon cost. We're dealing with technology here at the end of the day, and you can make technology work by putting very little time and effort into the features and the programming and all the different costs that go in to make technology work well and give you a lot of functionality. But it takes time and money to make it work really well and have a lot of functionality. So from the Trek standpoint, directly to answer your question, Don, all the Trek bikes have diagnostic tools that can get information about the battery's health and status and errors to varying different degrees that again go back to how much programming was done, what communication protocols are used. CAN bus was mentioned, that's the automotive one, but there's a number of other protocols that basically the charger or some sort of outside device can talk to a battery so they know how to communicate. I would say that there is some hope on the horizon. Europe is working on a battery regulation right now that is huge and covers all aspects of battery recycling, as well as the health of the battery and how you do diagnostics on it. It's going to be a couple of years, but that is going to make a lot of the industry sort of forced towards having better outputs of this information. There'll always be the possibility that people make batteries for the US market and not on a global market, in which case they might be able to circumvent this. But there's definitely a lot of sort of push at an international level to make this information more available and more digestible by people. So unfortunately right now, in a lot of cases, you do have to have a specific tool to get the diagnostics just because of, again, the communication, the programming. It's not just a ubiquitous type of information and technology that you can connect to and get what you need. Be great if we can get there one day though.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll take one more comment here. Michael, I see your hand up.
The other half of the battery testing and diagnosing would be like Trek has a system that, it's easily can communicate. The other half, what we do in our shop is we have a computerized battery analyzer. So we could be working on UL batteries, but they don't have a connection that connects to a computer that can talk. So it's like a third-party battery analyzer that we would use to determine how much capacity the batteries have. Because the majority of e-bikes on the market today don't have CAN bus or different systems you can just plug into a computer. Those are great systems like with Trek, but they're proprietary, so they might be limited to just Trek and not cover the other large portion of the bikes that are on the market. But again, that has to be done with training and safety in mind, depending on the battery that you're working on. So there is two ends. One that's the proprietary system for battery testing and all the information that it gives you, and one that would be very generic for other batteries that come in that need to be capacity tested.
Thank you, Michael. Some great conversation here. Let's keep moving to stay on agenda. I wanted to spend some time before concluding today to give comment to the proposed San Francisco fire code change. Today, San Francisco Board of Supervisors met regarding proposed changes to fire code to provide standards for charging and storage of lithium-ion batteries, including an informational campaign. I'm not sure if that meeting has happened already or is yet to happen today due to the time zone change, but I did want to allow for some comments from our panel members, just thoughts. Kunal from Bosch, I know you had some thoughts you wanted to share as well.
Yes, thank you, Heather. Is it okay if I share my screen?
believe you should be,
Yep, I can add you. Just 1 second. There,
you're
you
good.
should have permissions.
Okay, let me see. And let me know if you can see a Word document on my screen.
We can, yes.
Okay, so I did read through this proposed San Francisco ordinance, and on my screen I'm highlighting at least the issues that I see with the proposed ordinance. Within this document, there's at least 8 different places where they use the word nationally recognized testing laboratory. And this is a very critical topic to address because this can favor particular third-party certification labs that the products must be certified with, and we don't want to limit that to certain NRTLs only. So this nationally recognized testing laboratory must be replaced with the verbiage accredited testing laboratory, and this is somewhat of a similar exercise that we recently went through with the New York City as well. And then obviously the accredited testing laboratory should be defined what it means. Besides these 8 different mentions, there is a section in the ordinance that talks about battery chargers. And this is a copy paste from that ordinance of what it's trying to say. And there are a lot of standards that are missing that should have been called out here because those battery charger standards are referenced in UL 2849 or UL 2272, which are, so to speak, the parent standards for e-bike systems and micromobility devices. And this particular clause also, in addition to the 8 places I mentioned above, talks about listing from a nationally recognized testing laboratory. So I went ahead and redlined, how at least in my opinion, the verbiage should be. I added in the missing standards and corrected some verbiage of at least. So when I kept reading this 325.4, I could not really understand what exactly are they trying to ask bike shops or manufacturers to do indirectly. So I have already emailed this to you, Heather, but I'm just displaying this, that this is how at least in my opinion, I think how this particular clause should be written. And then I went ahead and defined, in my opinion, what an accredited testing laboratory should be. And a couple of other things that I noticed, that this particular ordinance defines a minimum distance that shall be maintained between each battery pack or other removable storage batteries during charging operations in a bike shop. And they mention 2 feet, and a minimum distance of 3 feet shall be maintained when each powered mobility device during charging operations, or in other words, when you're charging the battery on a bike or on a micro mobility device. I don't have a copy of the International Fire Code 2021, but at least in the proposal stage, which I did have, this distance was proposed to be 18 inches. I'm not sure. I know the IFC 2021 has been published, but I just don't have a copy of it to verify if that code still says 18 inches. And if it does, then I'm not sure why this 2 feet and 3 feet distances are coming from and should be corrected. So yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about and bring it to the attention. Of course, there could be other things in the ordinance that some other people can obviously review and check if they need to be addressed as well. But this is at least the things that I found in the ordinance that should definitely be addressed.
I appreciate
I'm
you
going to stop
sharing.
sharing my screen now.
I appreciate you sharing that and sending that to me as well, sharing it with the panel members. I'd really love to hear some more comments on this. Jeff, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Kunal, for bringing this up. I hadn't seen this one yet, but I've just gotten back yesterday from China, a long trip on out of away from email, let's say. But I just wanted to reiterate, like I agree with everything Kunal said. I also think it's really important just to point out sort of that distinction between nationally recognized test laboratory and accredited laboratory, and why it's important to anybody on this call. NRTLs were set up by OSHA to originally evaluate workplace equipment and stuff like that for safety. NRTLs are excellent laboratories. It's an excellent certification scheme. The challenge is always that it's limited in the number of laboratories that it's accredited. And even more so when you start looking at the e-bike standards for the batteries and for e-bikes themselves. There's 20 some NRTLs, but only I think 3 or 4 right now are certified to do e-bike standards. So where that comes into be a problem is that we want safe products and we want them to be tested. I mean, that's what my job is. I make sure that all of our products are tested. The challenge becomes there's a lot of products that aren't. And so when we put into place regulations that require specific certifications for a test body, you're trying to put thousands of untested products through a system that doesn't have the capacity to do that testing in any sort of fashion that is quick and responsive. So the intent of all these regulations is to get as much product safe and certified as quickly as possible. And that's why you just need to open it up a little bit to accredited testing laboratories. The global accreditation scheme is very, very similar, if not on par with much of OSHA's requirements. And the rest of the world uses that system. So it's very suitable for evaluating the appropriate laboratories to do this testing. And it opens up the number of laboratories and possibilities and locations of those laboratories greatly, like thousands of labs as opposed to 3. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit further, like why that's important to people, because it is a really big distinction and issue when regulators put that in the current state.
Appreciate that. Additional comments? I see Ibrahim, your hand is up.
Yeah, let me see if my video is working. Jeff, I really appreciate your comment on that. I really appreciate you providing the insight into that. One of the things to think about is this. First, any certification company that wants to apply to become an OSHA National Recognized Test Laboratory, they can. It's an open process where any company that does certification that gets themselves accredited to things like 17065 go and apply for that. So that's open for all third-party providers. Number 2, any third-party provider that has become an OSHA National Recognized Test Laboratory can then also apply for scopes of recognition of what standards they want in their scope. Apparently, out of the 20 National Recognized Test Laboratories, only 3 of us have been approved so far, but that list is growing. I mean, it was only 1 last year. They tripled it, right, to make it 3, and then they're probably going to add more. But it's a matter of who from the approved national recognized test laboratories wants to do UL 2849 and UL 2272. So any of the other 17 companies, if they're not already there approved, that's a question to ask one of them, saying, hey, why haven't you applied to become a UL 2849 or UL 2272 certification organization with under the OSHA NERDL program? So I want to clarify that the program isn't limited to anybody. It's just a matter of who's gotten accredited and who has applied. And one nice thing about the OSHA program and the way they do it is that it really is impartial, and it is trying to make sure that electrical equipment meets safety standards. This program and its inception dates back many, 50 years. It's actually over 50 years now that this kind of program existed. It's what's kept electrical equipment in the workplace safe. It's also been aligned to what you guys are seeing in the fire codes, where fire codes have used it for 100 years to say that if product has gone through a third party that has scope of recognition, that has the credentials, not just in the test capability, but in the engineering competences, then they are going to allow for the products that have been evaluated by those impartial, independent third parties to be utilized without any question. But if they aren't being done by those kind of companies, then they will have a question mark, because they'll say, okay, well, it's one thing to have a product enter the market. It's another thing a product enters the market, but the company that's saying that it's certified has no standing as a certification organization or a standing as a independent, impartial organization, then they'll have question marks. So I think in that regard, that's where the OSHA program kind of shines and stands out, is it gives very clear, who has been deemed independent, impartial, and has the competence to evaluate, test, and certify the products that are within the scope of recognitions of each individual national recognized test laboratory.
Thank you, Ibrahim. John, I see your hand up.
Yes, I would just add that, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, I would just add that, there are small differences between ISO 17065 and NRTL accreditation. The OSHA recognition does require factory audits 4 times a year for high risk products, and it could be 2 times a year for lower risk products. It's if under the ISO 17065 certification program, those audits are defined by the program itself, so they can be different. That doesn't mean it's good or bad. I think the certification body can decide how many audits that that they do as part of their program, the factory audits. But the main difference is OSHA has adopted UL 2849, and OSHA has the jurisdiction in workplace environment. So any bikes that are used in a workplace environment do fall under OSHA requirements. So, and their jurisdiction. So it could be a gray line on rather 17065 is enough, because if it's workplace environment, then OSHA has the jurisdiction there, and they have adopted the UL 2849 into their scope. So that's just something I wanted to add there.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Kunal, I see your hand back up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that, at least in my opinion, who's been dealing with NRTLs and other accredited laboratories for 23 years, there is no question whether the competency of 17065 accredited lab is any lesser than an NRTL lab. They are equally competent. Any laboratory which has accreditation to 17065 and certifies products, in this case, let's take an example of products certified to 2849, they all require third-party audits at the manufacturing locations. And most 17065, I cannot say all because I don't know, but most 17065 laboratories, they are certified under the scheme, a particular scheme in the 17065 program, which requires these audits to take place at manufacturing locations. And I agree with Ibrahim wholeheartedly that these audits are very important, because it keeps a check on the manufacturers that they're still producing the same design, using the same components, using the same materials with which they created the sample and approached this lab and got it tested and passed. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We will continue to watch the developments in San Francisco, and I appreciate the panel's comments on this important topic. Lots of information here, and it's really great to have clarity moving forward for everyone. With this, then, I am going to turn it over to Jay, who is going to summarize the topics covered today.
Thank you. If anybody wants to step in as I go through the summary, holler, because I've got 5 minutes to summarize what you guys just spent 2 hours talking about. And this certainly is subject to Heather's editing as we go through this, as well as yours as we begin to put drafts out in the field. On the technology topic, particularly thankful to what Ron Butler from 3 months ago showed us as, to me, the key here is that we've gone from the large locker that he showed us to moving toward a pilot project that goes more to the last item he showed us. And that is moving toward what he refers to as affordable solutions. We're also looking at these smart battery solutions that he's developed. And we're going to have to take a look at how those pieces come together. The good news, I think, for all of us is that he's talking about pilot programs in April of 2024, and he's providing the funding. What he's looking to this group for, specifically the NBDA, is to recommend 3 locations. I saw some dealers pop up as volunteering. I think, Heather, all we need to do is make sure we're documenting, and you're getting from Ron whether he wants to do those 3 in Detroit, or whether it's New York City, or exactly what he's got in mind from the standpoint of where. Mike, from the standpoint of the safe containment issue and the rules and regulations, which I think, Jeff, you pretty well supported from the standpoint of the importance of regulation, I think this goes to a best practice. It goes to what we can put together and the NBDA can put out there from the standpoint of what are the best practices, particularly relative to what Mike referred to as a compromised battery pack, and how in turn should that be dealt with. I think what we're edging toward is something that we need to talk more about, and that is a set of protocols for bike shops. And Don Miller, I think particularly we can move this toward the multi-occupancy and toward the building owner. And that is a set of protocols that will go to the care and feeding, if you will, the storage, charging, recharging of the lithium-ion battery. And we'll get into that in more detail, but it also includes a great deal of this last discussion that we've heard, particularly from Ibrahim and from Kunal and from Jeff, relative to, and I think also from John, relative to NERDLs compared to the accredited labs. And we'll look at putting this in writing so everybody can look at a draft relative to a better look at how the technology can begin to encompass both the idea of a pilot project. I think more importantly, though, is the rules, the regulations, which are more readily available to us and within shorter reach till we bridge toward what the pilot programs will provide, which are the cabinets that Brian Hawkins is going to look for inside of bike shops. I think also the regulations, if done properly, could lead us toward what we need for assurance relative to the safety of consumers. So if anybody wants to add to that, certainly please do. I'm going to move on to throttles, where what I see here is an educational effort or issue. NBDA offering, again, a protocol or a white paper or an educational piece. Michael, I think your comments from the Canadian Electric Bike Association are well-founded. And also, Michael, in particular, you guys both agree that this is more a programming issue for controllers as they relate to throttles and what throttles should be. I think, Heather, part of what we need to do is take a look at defining that. What is a throttle? They are proliferating, as far as I'm concerned, in the trade right now. And Jeff, one of the things that we've looked at carefully is Trek has the Electroline. The Electroline, which I'm sure you're involved in, has throttled product. This is true of Specialized with Globe. It's true of Giant with Momentum, and so on down the line. Throttles are becoming just since the last half of this year have become just more present in the industry. And I think it's time that the comments that you, Mike, others have made, including the test labs, be codified, if you will, put into a protocol that we issue. And I plan to work on that with Mike and Heather and make sure we get a draft out to you. Insurance coverage. Scott, good to hear from you. Haven't talked in a while. I hope you have a lot of snow up there in northern Wisconsin, and that you're out enjoying it. I think here again, what we're looking at as we get down to this, Michael, you put it very nicely. Education. what I see lacking here from the insurance standpoint is two things. First of all, thank you, Scott, for the update. This is what we suspicion. Now we've got it from the expert. You're probably the leading writer of insurance through Marsh McClanahan of anybody in our trade. And so you're on top of this. Here again, Heather, what my recommendations will show here is the possibility of a webinar with Scott for dealers, of putting together a protocol, Michael, from the standpoint of what we do at HBS, but also for the NBDA. This is a live, ongoing, iterative process because insurance is going to evolve. Now, some of us were in attendance at an insurance conference that the fire department of New York put on. And I think, Dawn, you may have been there, but we've talked about it. And I don't know, Scott, if you or your companies attended, but the bottom line here is that at the end of the day, the folks at the fire department of New York said to the insurance industry who were present for the seminar, cancellation of policies is not the proper strategy. Insurance companies should not be canceling policies, canceling insurance coverage. And in fact, there's more money for the insurance company industry to make if you're writing insurance and collecting premiums. So I think it behooves us from the standpoint of summarizing this. You've all repeated this several times. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's get together with Scott. And if Scott, if you got the time, I do think that a smaller group, maybe a subcommittee, should spend time with you putting together first educational advice for dealers, including a webinar, if you're up for it, so that dealers are informed. And then in turn, taking a look at what would be the next step from dealers to consumers. And then let's look at it again. Let's keep repeating it. Brian, this is also going to be helpful from the standpoint, I think, of what goes to the dealer side. I'm missing one here as a backup. We did throttles, we did insurance.
Battery health.
Battery health. I just found it. Rob, appreciated what you did for Call to Recycle. Love your program and everything you're doing. We try to stay as close to it as we can. Here again, I think there's an educational process. This probably as much as the other issues that we've discussed. What you've already discussed, what Mike laid out, is the battery health issue goes to what should dealers be looking for? What's the inspection process? What should consumers be doing? What should they be aware of? An educational program, first of all, I think for the dealer community, up to date. And Mike, the battery management system, the BMS, we've been aware of it. We talked about it. Jeff, you're very aware of this. You guys have got the understanding of how this works. So does Michael. But when we get to what's available in the market, we're just beginning to scratch the surface. I've been aware of BMSs because of working with Mike. What I wasn't aware of is that there was a limitation, as Jeff, you and Mike both point out, or Michael both point out, there isn't a lot of equipment available. There's not a lot of communication available. There's, to Dawn's point, you can't just go into any bike shop and expect that the dealer is going to have the tools they need to tap into a BMS. I think we need to work on that. And that probably is an initiative, Dawn, or Heather, that we should put together from the standpoint of a protocol or to reach out and make sure that we're working with the community to develop that technology as we go forward. But I think right at the beginning, we're talking again about education and making sure that there's knowledge of what it is that dealers have to do. I don't know that there's enough here to do a webinar, but I do think within the team, within this panel, we need to keep discussing this. And Jeff, Michael, Mike, Fritz, I think we have to keep talking among the people that are on top of this as to what we could do to spread this knowledge and get it moving forward so that, Dawn, we could eventually get to the point where you can go into a bike shop and have them diagnose what's going on with your battery. And I don't know, Mike, if we'll ever get, because I heard your testimony to the point that you pointed out to the commissioners on July 27th to that battery warning light, but that makes a lot of sense as well. that there's some external means by which bike shop owners and consumers eventually could look at the health of a battery. So I believe that covers a quick summary. I've probably gone over my 5 minutes. Is there anything else anybody would like to add that I've missed? Or did I overwhelm you with the amount of information?
Thank you,
Okay,
Jay.
thank you.
Excellent job, Jay. With that, feedbacks and drafts will be submitted to panel members. It looks like we have lots of work to do, continuing to educate retailers. I truly appreciate all of our panel members and those who have attended the event today. It's a lot of your time. It's a lot that you dedicate to work in partnership, and it is really helpful. The next event is scheduled for March 12th, 2024. I'm sure we will connect via email and before then. Again, I appreciate everyone who made the time today, and welcome all comments and feedback direct to me, and I will submit those drafts for follow-up. With that, we'll close today's meeting, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you once again.
Thank you
Happy
for pulling this
holidays.
together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.